didn't make or buy a new costume this year for Halloween because I'm not going anywhere, so I figured for this video I'd just wear an old one. This is my Fallout 4. I got the thing. Cosplay. The problem is that I made this when I was 17. I've since grown physically, so at this point it barely fits. This is excruciatingly uncomfortable, but I'm already wearing it, so let's just fucking get this over with. Happy Halloween, everyone. I'm not Mikey Neapolitan, though. I'm Mikey Spookpolitan. Oh, no, that sucks. No, that sucks, too. Neapolitan. I mean, it still kind of sucks, but it's better than the other two, I guess. I'm broadcasting you live from Haunted Studios here in Spooky Town, USA, where all of your greatest fears come to life, otherwise known as Los Angeles. Oh, traffic, taxes, high property values. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Halloween Porktober. Why is his name so much better than mine? Tonight, on Old Hallows Eve, we're here to discuss something truly horrifying, truly spooky. That's right, I'm talking about poorly written Dracula. Now, I'm referring to the Dracula miniseries on Netflix that came out back in January of this year, which feels like it was a million fucking years ago. This show is very odd for a few reasons, but so how about enough of this pussyfooting around, enough of this Halloween intro shit. How about we just dive on in? Firstly, there are 3 episodes and they're each an hour and a half long, so it's more like a trilogy of movies than a miniseries, but whatever. The first 2 movie episode things are based on the original Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, I haven't read Bram Stoker's Dracula because I can't read, so I can't really speak to how accurate they are, but what I can speak to is my own enjoyment, and I enjoyed it. I liked these first 2 episodes. Visually, they look nice. All the sets and the costumes and the makeup and the effects all looked pretty good. I don't really have an issue with anything there. I think they're well cast. The guy who plays Dracula, I've never seen him in anything before, and I can't be fucked to remember what his name is, so I'm just gonna call him the guy who plays Dracula. He was good. He was suitably menacing and creepy when he needed to be, but also at times very charming and charismatic, so you understand how people could be seduced by him and drained of their blood. In this interpretation, Van Helsing is a woman and a nun. I liked her character. I liked how weird she was. She was very sarcastic and clever, and she always had a trick up her sleeve. And then Johnny, Mina, all the sailors and passengers of the Demeter ship in the second episode. I really can't think of any character who felt like they were miscast. There were some moments that were appropriately creepy and well done, although me personally, I was never really scared. To be fair, TV shows and movies in general don't really scare me at this point in my life, especially since most of them are just filled with, stupid like jump scares and crap like that, which is just so lazy and creatively bankrupt. I mean, honestly, if you the Demeter sinks at the end of the second episode. Dracula climbs into his coffin, and once he climbs out and swims to shore, he's confronted by some sort of organization, and you find out that he's in the modern day. He was asleep for 123 years. At this point, I was very curious to see where they were going to take the show from this point, what direction they were going to go in, and I never would have guessed the direction was straight into the dumpster, because holy shit, this is where the show just completely fucking falls apart. We're introduced to some new characters. We meet Dr. Van Helsing, who is a descendant of the nun Van Helsing, and they're both played by the same actress. And this is more of a personal thing, but I kind of can't stand it whenever a show or a movie casts the same actor as like a character and then that character's relative. It always feels lazy to me, and it's like they're like people look similar to their family members, but they never look 100% exactly the same, with the exception, of course, being Bahubali and Bahubali 2, where the same actor played Bahubali and Bahubali, who are father and son. Of course, that's the exception because those are the greatest films ever made. Hell yeah, brother. Anyway, Dr. Van Helsing is just a less interesting version of the nun Van Helsing. That's all you need to know about her. We're also introduced to this guy who works for the organization that captures Dracula. And we're introduced to this girl that he's in love with. I hate using this word because just like every other word that rises in popularity on the internet, it's been overused to the point to where now it doesn't mean anything. But in this context, I feel it's appropriate. This guy that we're introduced to is a complete simp. He's in love with this girl for seemingly no reason. I mean, she sucks, but we'll get into that later. So we find out that this organization that's captured Dracula is called the Jonathan Harker Foundation. Jonathan Harker being the lawyer who's imprisoned and slowly killed by Dracula in the first episode. His wife, Mina, escaped Dracula, and she inherited some money and used it to start this foundation whose purpose is to find Dracula. So we cut to this lady who's one of the scuba divers who finds Dracula's coffin, and she's giving like a briefing to all these other people at the foundation about what happened. And we're shown in a video that she's showing to everyone that once they opened his coffin, she immediately starts, this lady, this fucking genius, immediately starts shoving her fingers into his mouth, you know, where his razor sharp blood draining fangs are. Yeah, she starts shoving her fingers in there, and of course one of them gets bitten off. Who could have fucking predicted that happening? Let's say that you work for an organization whose sole purpose is to find Dracula. So you know that he's real. You know that vampires are real. That's just accepted. And you find him, and he's in a coffin in a catatonic state. Okay, so from this point, would you lock that shit up and then airlift it to your base or whatever, where you can, you know, throw him in a cell and experiment on him in a more controlled environment? Or would you start shoving your stupid fingers into his notoriously deadly mouth? Which one of those options sounds more appealing? Sounds like the smarter thing to do? Jeez, what a fucking dipshit. While Dracula is in his cell, we see that he has an iPad for some reason, and Dr. Van Helsing takes a blood sample that'll come in handy later. And then this guy walks in, and it's explained that this man is Dracula's lawyer. And Dracula has been Skyping with him on the iPad. He managed to log on to the internet because the Wi-Fi password is Dracula. A few things. Why did they give him the iPad in the first place? Why would they make the Wi-Fi password something that he could so easily just guess? There are guards watching his cell at all times. How did none of them notice that he was fucking Skyping with someone? And also, this is... Let me just run another scenario by you real quick. Okay, so this fucking guy, this lawyer is sitting at his desk, right, at his law firm, and he gets a Skype call from someone he doesn't recognize. He picks it up, and it's a man who says that he is Dracula, and that he's being imprisoned, and he needs legal counsel. So this guy, this adult man who graduated from law school, believes that this person is an immortal vampire, packs his shit up, rushes down to provide legal counsel for this guy. What part of that makes any kind of sense? I'm genuinely asking. I need your help. Please, someone try to explain this to me. Already, that's pretty fucking bonkers. But on top of that, upon this man arriving, why would the guards let him in? Right? They're running an illegal, independent organization. And they're just gonna let in this guy who claims to be Dracula's lawyer? Tell him to fuck off. What is he gonna do? Yes, by the way, I know that this foundation is illegal because on the beach, where Dracula came to shore and was confronted by this organization, he fucking kills one of them. He kills a person. He shoots her in the face. And they cover it up. So they let Dracula go, but while we're on the topic of this foundation, it's hinted at a number of times that this foundation is doing like shady shit, that they're doing bad things, you know, like they covered up that murder, and Dracula says that he recognizes that all the guards around his cell are mercenaries, and he says he can pick out mercenaries because he was a warlord, which you're gonna want to keep that in mind. It's a surprise tool that'll come in handy later. And Dr. Van Helsing at one point says she knows that this money was coming from something bad, but she's like, I've done good with it. And so this whole time I'm watching and I'm thinking, wow, like where is this money coming from? What is going on? I thought Mina, Jonathan Harker's wife, started this foundation with her own money. I thought that's where it came from, but now it's like there seems to be some kind of nefarious purpose going on, and I was just wondering the entire time what was going on. Well, they never tell you. They never tell you. In fact, after Dracula gets released, we never see or hear from the Jonathan Harker Foundation again. So... Oh no, I'm about to be murdered! Oh wait, I think it's just a power outage. Wait a minute, I have the perfect solution for this. A costume change. Ooh, alright, that's better. Let's see here. There we go. Alright. Oh, Jesus Christ. Shoving all this hair in that fucking helmet is no small feat. Well, now that I've dealt with that excuse to change into a more comfortable costume, I mean, that completely real power outage, let's dive back in, shall we? So Dracula gets released, and with the phone he steals from Simp, he finds and starts interacting with Lucy, the girl that Simp is in love with. And then we cut to 3 months later. Dr. Van Helsing has drank the blood of Dracula, the blood sample that she got from him, and now she has the memories of the nun Van Helsing, because in episode 2, Dracula was feeding on nun Van Helsing, and so because he was feeding off of her in episode 2, Her memories were in his blood, and now his blood is in Dr. Van Helsing, so she has those second-hand memories. But I don't... How does this ability work exactly? I thought Dracula gets people's memories and their skills from drinking their blood because he's a vampire and he's like magic or whatever. But so can anyone do this? Or is it just because it was Dracula's blood? Oh, this shit. They never explain anything in this fucking show. We also catch up with Lucy, who at this point is engaged. And on the side, she's seeing Dracula and letting him feed off of her. Now, I mentioned earlier that she sucks because, well, she sucks. She's vain and self-centered and just egotistical and stupid. She doesn't have any redeeming qualities at all. From the moment we meet her to the moment where she dies, yeah, she dies, but we'll get into that later. She lets Dracula feed off of her completely of her own free will, seemingly. There's no hint that he's hypnotizing her or anything like that. And he even explains to her that once he's completely drained her of her blood, she'll become an undead. And they make the distinction between vampires and the undead. You know, vampires are like, you know, they can drink blood and remain young and, you know, get people's memories and knowledge. Undead people, they continue to rot and they're just aware of it the entire time. At one point a character says, even as a pile of dust, you still retain your sentience. And Dracula also specifically warns her not to be cremated when she dies, because she'll be, you know, she'll feel it the entire time being burned, and it's probably, you know, not great to feel your skin melting off and shit. Then she dies, becomes undead, gets cremated, and she's like screaming the entire time while she's fucking melting or whatever. And then she breaks out of the furnace and takes her melted ass over to Dracula's apartment, where Simp and Dr. Van Helsing are currently confronting him. And Dr. Van Helsing is like, Lucy, why don't you take a selfie? Because when she looks in the mirror, she doesn't see the melted gross shit. She sees how she looked when she was alive, which seems to be the opposite of how it works with Dracula. When he looks in the mirror, he sees like this decrepit old man when, you know, he looks like relatively young. So not entirely clear how that works either. But so she takes a selfie and she's like, oh my god, I'm so gross looking and whatever. And like, I thought this was supposed to be her comeuppance. Like, you know, she was just terrible and she treated people like shit. And so now, like, oh, she's getting what she deserves or whatever. But then there's like sad music playing and Simp is like, Lucy, kiss me. And Lucy is like, no, you don't want to kiss me, I'm gross and melted and whatever. And then Simp is like, Lucy, there's not been a day when I didn't want to kiss you. And I was like... and then he kills her with a wood stake. You see, the problem is that Lucy sucked, right? She was aware of what Dracula was doing and what was going to eventually happen to her, and she just chose to allow that to happen. Right? Here's how you make this work. You open it up with Simp and Lucy, except Simp is not a simp, he's an ordinary man. So Ordinary Man and Lucy are in a relationship, right? They live together. They're not married, but they're, you know, they've been dating for a long time. And Ordinary Man works for the Jonathan Harker Foundation, and he gets called in when they find Dracula, and he goes in, and Dracula steals his phone, and that's how he finds out about Lucy. She's like calling him or whatever, like maybe like, hey, what do you want for dinner? Whatever people in relationships talk about. And so he goes to their house and he hypnotizes Lucy and he feeds on her. And then it cuts to 3 months later and Dracula has a swanky apartment and Lucy like sneaks out at night to go meet with Dracula because she's still being hypnotized by him, and he's like making her do it. And I almost said simp. In this scenario, he's an ordinary man, not a simp. So ordinary man is like, I think she's having an affair, but really she's not. She's being seduced by Dracula's magical charms. As she keeps getting drained, she becomes more self-absorbed, and she treats people like shit. Kind of like how regular Lucy acts in the actual show, except now it's not her fault, it's because of what Dracula's doing to her. The same thing happens where she dies and she gets cremated and she comes back to life, but after she dies, I almost said simp again, ordinary man finds out that it was because Dracula killed her. And so he teams up with Dr. Van Helsing to go confront Dracula, and now he has a more compelling reason to do that, rather than he just kind of had a crush on this girl for seemingly no reason. And the interaction between the two of them when her fucking charred-ass body walks in and she sees how gross she looks, it's like actually maybe sad and kind of tragic, because these two had like a normal healthy relationship until Dracula came along and ruined it. And also it makes Dracula a more compelling character, because on the one hand he's very charming and charismatic and you do kind of like watching him, but on the other hand you see the direct result of him feeding on people and how it can, ruin their lives and ruin the lives of the people around them. But the final nail in the coffin for this show, pun completely intended, is how they explain Dracula's weaknesses. So throughout the 3 episodes, Nun Van Helsing keeps bringing up this idea that his weaknesses, having to be invited places and being afraid of the cross and all these things are all somehow connected. They're all somehow one weakness. So Simp leaves because Dr. Van Helsing tells him to, and thank God I can finally stop saying the word simp. I hate that word, and I genuinely couldn't remember what the character's name was, and so I just started calling him Simp as a joke. What am I supposed to do? Fucking Google his name? You expect me to do that? Come on, get real. Grow up. I'm not your real dad, asshole. So Dr. Van Helsing tears down the curtains, and Dracula's bathed in the sunlight, and he collapses, and he's screaming, and he's, oh my god, but then he realizes that he's fine. He's not burning up. In fact, nothing's happening to him. Now, kids, you're gonna want to buckle up your seatbelts, because this shit's about to get B-A-N-A-N-A-S bananas. So Dr. Van Helsing explains that the connection between all of his weaknesses is that he's a warlord who wants a warrior's death so bad that he's ashamed of his immortality. He's so ashamed that he fucking placeboed all of these weaknesses into existence. He's afraid of the sun, and he skulks in the shadows because he's ashamed, I guess. He sleeps in a coffin specifically filled with his native soil to simulate what it would be like to, be laid to rest in a grave after being killed in battle. And he fears the cross because it reminds him of Jesus, and Jesus had the courage to die.
What? Why?
So, let me break it down for you.
Break it down for me.
They never mentioned Dracula being a warlord until this episode. Earlier in the episode, remember that surprise tool? Well, it's coming in handy right now. Because the first time he ever mentions being a warlord is when he says he can pick out mercenaries. And so to say that it's now the most important aspect of his character because it's where all of his weaknesses come from is just very narratively unsatisfying, because there's been almost no hints to it. In fact, in the first 2 episodes, he's portrayed mostly as like an aristocrat. Not to mention, it doesn't explain any of his other weaknesses. I mean, like wooden stakes we've seen that they can kill the undead and vampires. So, where does that come from? Why does he have to be invited into places in order to come in? Right? I'd imagine that a warlord would probably be pretty accustomed to just kicking in doors and doing whatever the fuck he wants without a formal invitation. They never mention him being weak to silver or garlic, so I guess those aren't a problem. And in the second episode, when they're on the ship, the Demeter, they protect themselves by nailing pages of the Bible in a circle around themselves to ward off Dracula. A similar tactic to how one might ward off a sea bear. Of course, a useless strategy against a sea rhinoceros, but I digress. So the cross scares him because Jesus had the courage to die, or whatever. But, I mean, not every page of the Bible is about Jesus. Not every page of the Bible is about someone dying. So why does that scare him? And if we're getting that tangential, wouldn't literally everything remind you of dying? Wouldn't he be afraid of fire? I mean, think about how many women died in the Salem witch trials, right? All of those women who had the courage to die because they could do math or swim or whatever. Terrifying. So now that the dumbass twist is over, Dr. Van Helsing is dying because she has cancer. And as she's dying, Dracula starts to feed on her, and he says something like, after all this time, did you think I would let your death hurt? Because, you know, she has the nun's memories and personality and whatever. And it's supposed to be sentimental or something, but I was just thinking, like, what an asshole. Like, isn't she gonna turn into an undead now? And she's gonna be, you know, like conscious and aware for the rest of time as she dissolves into a pile of dust. So, like, Dracula gets to die, and Dr. Van Helsing gets to be the fucking living pile of dust. Like, wow. What a great fucking trade-off. Alright, well, the show's over, so that's about it. I was originally gonna do a review for Hubie Halloween, the new Adam Sandler Netflix comedy. Help me! But, you ever, like, watch or experience something and you just immediately know when it's over that you never want to talk or think about it again because just experiencing it, it's already taken up too much of your time in life? No! Help me, Mommy! Help me! Help! Well, Hubie Halloween is one of those movies. Alright, my ghouls and goblins and hot goth girls, please call me. That's all from me. Please like and comment and subscribe and do the bell thing and subscribe to my Patreon and my OnlyFans and my Twitch and my Twitter and my Instagram and my LinkedIn. Halloween Porktober. Who's finally decided to start correctly wearing his mask? This fucking asshole wouldn't sit 6 feet away from me, and on top of that, he couldn't even properly wear his mask. This man, this cunt. And he gets a better Halloween name than I do. What a piece of shit. You got any closing words for us?